Coming into the inaugural weekend of the expanded college football playoffs, it is the Oregon Ducks entering as the favorite to win the whole thing, with the SEC newcomer Texas just behind them in terms of the numbers there as you see them at 1-2. My money's on the long shot, Arizona State. I'm rolling with Pete Prisco and my fiance who graduated from Arizona State. They are plus 6,000, so a long way to go there. That's what the numbers are saying. But what are our experts saying? We've got national college football reporter Brandon Marcello joining now to make a case for all 12 of the college football teams because all of them have great qualities, Brandon. So let's get into it. We're going to start with number 1, Oregon. They are the number 1 seed. And your headline for the Oregon Ducks is that they are perfectly balanced as a champion. So do the easy job and tell us why you think Oregon can win the national championship.
Well, they've got a veteran roster, number 1. They're battle-tested. They've already played the Boise State, which is in the playoff. They've played Ohio State head-to-head, and they've beaten them. They're undefeated, of course. But what I really like about them is that they've really kind of calmed down after those first 2 to 3 weeks of the season. I mean, everybody was writing them off early in the year, right? They almost lost to Idaho, an FCS team. They almost lost to Boise State, and one could argue they probably should have in a 3-point win when Ashton Jeanty went off for, nearly 200 yards like he did all season. But the offensive line has really been the difference for them. They've gotten things back together. They're not allowing as many sacks as they were. I think they allowed 7 sacks in the first 2 weeks of the season, and ever since then they've only allowed 5 sacks in these last 11 games. They're playing very well together. Their defensive line is in the top 15 in sacks produced per game. They just have a balanced offense and defense that just complements each other so well. No one really has a day off. They play consistently. And I would say of any team in the playoff this year right now, they've been the most consistent team week after week after week.
They have also been the most consistent team when it comes to that number 1 spot in the rankings. So no surprise, they are the favorite to win the whole thing. We'll see how their path pans out. If we go to the number 2 seed, it is, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs, a team that has been there before. This has been kind of a strange year for them, I think, Brandon. But your headline here is their big game experience. How will that help them in 2024?
Yeah, they've played in gigantic games already this season. Of course, they got a championship level in Kirby Smart. He's taken to a team to the 4th playoff appearance. But they've already played this season on the road at Texas, got a big win there. They played Texas again in the SEC championship game, beat them in overtime. They had an 8 overtime game against Georgia Tech that was big-time rivalry-type atmosphere. And, of course, they've been on the road at Alabama, a game that they lost. And they played Tennessee, another playoff team, and beat them earlier this season. They've been in more big games, I would argue, than any other team in the field this season, and they have mostly come out on top, save for that Alabama game. And listen, it is very difficult to beat any team twice in the same season, and Georgia's been able to do that against Texas. And as you said, one of the top 4 teams in the odds to win the national championship, the Bulldogs, very experienced, very ready to go and win this thing.
Plus 500 is where the odds are sitting currently for Georgia. We'll have to keep an eye out on the quarterback spot, though, with Carson Beck. We'll have to see if he goes here. All right, let's move on to number 3, Boise State, who you've already talked about him, Ashton Jeanty, one of the best players, if not the best player in college football this year. How can he do the impossible and help Boise State pick up a championship?
Yeah, Boise State just needs to lean into it, right? I mean, do not shy away from Ashton Jeanty. He is your best player. Find a way to get him the ball as much as you can. He's 132 yards short of breaking Barry Sanders' single-season rushing record. This is a guy who just rushes for nearly 200 yards a game. And I mentioned, we want to talk about, well, he hasn't really played a good defense yet, but go back to week 2 when he rushed for 192 yards, had 3 touchdowns, averaged 7.7 yards per carry in that 37-34 loss to number 1 Oregon now on the road. Oregon, perfect this season. Boise State and Ohio State have pushed them to the brink, and Ashton Jeanty has been the big reason why for Boise State.
Jeanty, second in the Heisman race this year, only to two-way star Travis Hunter. So I feel like if he was not going to win the Heisman, I'm happy that it did go to Travis. But we'll have to see. Boise State playing dark horse here. All right, let's go to Arizona State. I feel like, Brandon, if you don't know, now you know, because Arizona State put everyone on record there in that Big 12 championship game. But when it comes to the Sun Devils here, kind of a similar story as Boise State. They're the hottest team right now with really nothing to lose. They've got a couple of really good players on their team, too. What do you think about the Sun Devils in the CFP?
Well, I think they're the hottest team in the country. Obviously, Oregon is, quote-unquote, the hottest team because they've won more games in a row. But Arizona State has won 6 straight games. They've been playing with house money, it seems like, all season. They were picked dead last by the media in the Big 12 poll. And what have they done? They've just keep winning here down the stretch and done so in some very difficult games. And I've seen teams kind of get rolling late in the season going into the playoff. And here's the thing. We're in an era now with this expanded playoff where I think a lot of teams we're going to look at the end of the season, see the hottest teams making a run in the playoff, much like we see in the NCAA basketball tournament. And Arizona State is set up for that, and they've got a great running back in Cam Scatterbo who can go off against anybody.
Yeah, he told the Heisman and company, I'm sad that I'm not here at this ceremony, so we'll keep our eye on that. Let's go to number 5, Texas. A lot of people have been saying Texas is back, Texas is back. Why do you believe in them?
Well, Texas, I call a well-adjusted contender. And the way I mean that is they got blown out and owned at home by Georgia, and they got better from that. They rebounded. Quinn Ewers still a little hampered, I think, with that injury in the abdominal region. But I was impressed with their performance in the SEC championship game, and obviously that game was closer. I think they've learned and adjusted as the season goes along.
Number 6 is Penn State. You have on here that they have a favorable draw and a favorable matchups as well. Tell us more about the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I think of anybody in the field right now, they got the best draw at number 6 here going against the potential really easy road. I say easy, but I really like the mark here. And here's the thing. We saw them step up against big-time competition previously against Ohio State, obviously a loss, and they lost to Oregon. But the way they were able to keep up the pace and score a lot of points against Oregon surprised me. I knew Anel Kotelnicki, the new OC there, was going to do some good things with that offense. And it's gotten better week to week. This is a team, I think, that can hang with anybody and can also be explosive offensively in a shootout if they have to be.
We know how far a win would go for James Franklin and Penn State in the CFP. We move on to number 7, Notre Dame. Everybody's talking about Northern Illinois, Brandon Marcello. How can we put all of that behind us here and get the Fighting Irish a championship?
Notre Dame flying under the radar really all season since that game, and I think that's been a great thing for them. And what have they done? They just have the second best scoring margin average in wins this season by an average of 26.3 points. Riley Leonard's developing more as a passer. That defense has been stellar. And listen, Notre Dame is the most opportunistic team in the country going into this playoff. They have the second best turnover margin at plus 16. You need that in the playoff. I love their draw as well.
All right, number 8, Ohio State, the best roster money can buy. That's what we said all preseason, and yet here we are. They still didn't beat Michigan, but they do have the second shortest odds, I should say, to win the CFP. Brandon, how do they do it?
It's simple as that. They have the best roster money can buy and potentially the best roster in college football and, of course, in this playoff field. They need to win. They have a good draw, and it's got everything you can ask for. You're playing at home in the first round, and then you have a potential rematch against Oregon, which you lost in a very tight battle there in Eugene. You should win that game in a neutral site based off how you performed on the road. They need to win. Keep Ryan Day off that hot seat. They should win, and they should make the semifinals, in my opinion.
Yeah, everyone's looking forward to that rematch if we can get there. Number 9, Tennessee, and those rabid fans out in Knoxville, Brandon Marcello. They are explosive when needed. Tell us more about the Volunteers.
Yeah, we've seen this. I mean, early in the season, they were averaging 61.8 points per game against non-conference opponents. But, of course, when they got in the SEC, that average dropped tremendously down to 25 points. And they had that stretch there where they couldn't score at all in the first half of games. But they've turned it around the last 3 weeks. I've been really impressed with the way they've come out. Remember, they scored 17 points and exploded on the road at Georgia, then got shut out in the second half as they adjusted by Georgia's defense. But then they went on the road, scored 36 against a good Vanderbilt team. This is a team that can be explosive, and if they hit it at the right time, they could upset some teams and make a run.
Tennessee, Ohio State in that first matchup, though, will definitely be a good one. Let's go to number 10, Indiana. Curt Cignetti told everyone to Google him, so now we're Googled him. We know who he is, and at this point, he's the score-happy underdog, according to you, Brandon.
Yeah, one blemish on their schedule, of course, that Ohio State lost, but they were gifting 14 points through special teams in that game in what would have been a tight game. Indiana was kind of on a roll there before the miscues. And they've beaten opponents by a nation-leading average of 28.7 points per game. And they only have a bus ride road trip to Notre Dame, staying in state there for the first game of the college football playoff. Indiana's offense can score points, and Notre Dame better watch out.
You better watch out for Curt Cignetti. All right, SMU, number 11. What an electric year they've had in their first year in the ACC. A little bit of a blip there in the championship game, but nonetheless, they are capable, particularly in the trenches, Brandon.
Yeah, Kevin Jennings is everything that sparks them at quarterback, of course. But what they did in the offseason with only 10 months' notice of joining the ACC, is they built it in the trenches. They got 13 offensive and defensive linemen, all played in the Power 5 previously, and that's gotten them going. They got one of the best rush defenses in the country. They can win just by battling in the trenches.
Last but not least, number 12, Clemson, a team that everybody wrote off week 1 when they got blown out by Georgia, but yet here they are in the CFP, and they've done it behind a championship coach in Dabo Swinney, Brandon.
Dabo just doing Dabo things. He leads the pack with 7 college football playoff appearances. He knows how to win in championship environments. We saw it in the ACC championship game. Listen, they don't have great odds going into this, but never count out Dabo, especially when they don't really have much to lose here. Everybody's expecting them to lose. I really like this team going in, but we'll see what happens at Texas.
You can never count out Clemson. He's Brandon Marcello, and if the rapid fire was too quick, don't worry. You can find his article right now on CBSSports.com. Brandon, good stuff as always. And while you're at it, make sure you get locked into the most comprehensive high school and college sports coverage by checking out our partners at 24/7 Sports. You can keep up with the latest in NIL, transfer portal, and recruiting. Just head to 247sports.com for more.